circular economy is often thought of as what to do with something at the end of its life, but actually making sure that materials are respected, thought about more carefully, treasured, would make such a massive difference.
So I think with the cocoa, the big one is that the statistic that just stuck out to me was that 75% of the cocoa pod is discarded, and we only use like a little tiny bean to make chocolate. And I just didn't realize that, I think we know about sort of the waste and stuff, but I didn't realize how much of that waste was also just a part of the everyday of producing.
Most of that material is completely lost. It doesn't have an economic viability for smallholder farmers. Most of cacao production is at the small farmer scale, and it's heavily concentrated in West African countries. And there simply isn't the mechanism or economic justification for saving that material. And that all of that organic material that's used to make chocolate has utility and is valuable.
I think when we think about waste, I think it's particularly in food, we think a lot about plate waste and kind of the stuff that we're throwing away after if we don't finish our meal. But I think we don't always stop to think about how much of that waste is integral to the production system.
If you can find a way to make the material that's left to decay in the field useful, just as an example, you can turn cacao material into lots of different things like electricity, biofuel, and animal feed, and other things. It has value, but at the moment it's not able to be recovered or used as a resource.
In thinking about that was how we talk about byproducts. So we have the main food, let's say the main food is chocolate, and then, or chocolate from making the cocoa pod. And then we think about the byproducts of making that chocolate. So it might be cocoa pulp or the husk. But then I was listening to a podcast where they said, what if we thought about it as a co-product? And that really stuck to me because I was like, that kind of rethinking about how we call things and the power of language and how we name things can have a huge influence on how you then treat that thing.
So essentially the circular economy is looking at materials as fully resourceful. How can you utilize every aspect of that material, keep it in circulation, use it, but also that brings benefits for the people, the farmers. And I think if we can look at the beginning of the journey and work with people in locally specific context to make it economically viable and support them to either through technology, innovation or investment or whatever it might be, policy, to actually be able to harness that material and export it and turn it into useful materials, you can bring and improve the livelihoods of the people there.
I've been very lucky to be inspired by quite a few pioneers in the field. I would maybe point to two. One of them was more than 20 years ago, hearing the brilliant C.K. Prahalad talk about the fortune at the base of the pyramid. We've really always been taught in kind of consumer language to think about the wealthy as our audience. But when you realize everyone in the world has needs and innovation can help to serve those needs cost effectively, that seemed like a very, very interesting innovation opportunity. But then the other side of it was more recently rediscovering the limits to growth, and the Club of Rome's work on material efficiency and sufficiency just made so much sense. People really know about climate and carbon, but thinking about it in a more rounded aspect, also balancing social and environmental needs, the people really need to be part of the picture.
And that to me is how the circular economy can be implemented in action for the benefit of people and the people who need it the most. The people who we in our societies are most dependent on in the food sector.